Hey friend, so really quick, I launched a second channel called Dusk Till Shawn 2 as a backup channel and a home to any Cartoon Network related content. Please, it would mean an awful lot to me if after this video you would take a moment to check it out and subscribe, as it would help me a ton. It's one of those things that helps me secure my future here on YouTube as far as issues on the back end are concerned. I'll have it linked in the description box down below. There's currently a massive Courage the Cowardly Dog video over there that I had trouble getting on this channel, so Dusk Till Shawn 2 is the only place where you can find it. Thank you so much for everything, my friends. I really appreciate you all. A little more than a year ago, I made a video about the time Tommy Pickles was abducted. It was truly a shocking episode in hindsight, but what's even more shocking is the truth that I didn't realize at the time. That instance wasn't the only time that it happened, and the further I looked into it and the patterns that would develop beyond the tip of the iceberg, the more disturbing it became. This wasn't just a one-time thing. There's a shocking pattern of neglect, of danger, and of Tommy being left to deal with things no toddler should ever have to face. Perhaps the most devastating of all, though, would be the fact that the two abductions that Tommy would face would just be the start of it all. They would be nothing but tipping points to a far deeper and more heartbreaking story. A story that, though some of us may have connected the dots on, Tommy's parents, on the other hand, would forever remain blissfully unaware, completely oblivious to not only what their son had been through, but also the weight that he would carry as a result, and how it would change his life and shape his outlook on the world. And that's why today, on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're gonna check out some key episodes of Rugrats which showcase plain as day a chain of moments from across the series that highlight just how much Tommy has been emotionally and mentally damaged by all of this, and how no one, especially his parents, realized just what they did to him. By the end of this video, I'm certain you'll see the same thing that I did and be just as mind blown as I am. Of course, we have to go back and begin with the tipping point here, though. We saw Tommy getting abducted in the season 1 episode Ruthless Tommy. Two criminals mistake him for the infant son of rich mogul Ronald Thump, and they take him for ransom. It was a pretty wild episode, and it made for a roller coaster of a video in my opinion. However, realizing that it had happened yet again after that instance, albeit with some vastly different context, was what really changed everything for me. It was the beginning of a chain of reaction which would lead to such a perspective-changing realization. This would come in the form of the Season 2 episode, The Case of the Missing Rugrat. This episode starts out with Grandpa Lou driving, with Tommy riding shotgun, not a single seatbelt in sight, as he talks about how they're going on an adventure. On the way, they stop at a grocery store to grab some snacks, and Grandpa Lou ends up dumbfounded by an old Duesenberg in the parking lot, just like the one that he drove when he was a private eye back in the 1930s. He asks the guy leaning against the car if he can sit behind the wheel with his grandson for old time's sake, and the guy says that he doesn't care, as he just kind of walks off. While they sit in the car, though, their shopping cart rolls away and Grandpa Lou ends up stopping it right at the last second before it hits another classic car. When he heads back over to the Duesenberg, however, it's nowhere to be found.
Oh, what happened to your car?
Wasn't my car. That's my car.
Oh, no! Tommy! Tommy!
Far away in the heights, we see the old car pulling up to a fancy mansion. A heavy-set man steps out carrying Tommy in one hand and a bag of groceries in the other. He walks through the house, which is crawling with cats, and right up to two old women, saying that he found Tommy crawling around in the back of the Duesenberg while he was on his way home from the market.
A child? We don't have a child, do we, Clarice? Certainly not, Emma. Unless... Max, have you taken a wife?
Oh, a wedding. I love weddings. I was almost married once, you know.
The child, ladies.
Oh, the child. What a dear, sweet thing it is.
Max asks the old ladies if he should inform the authorities. However, they tell him that he can't, saying that Tommy looks just like their late father and that he must have been sent here for a reason. The old ladies stop him from calling the police as they proclaim that Tommy was sent to them to be the heir to their family fortune. They pass him over to Max for him to change Tommy's diaper, and just like that, we cut over to Grandpa Lou, who's trying to think about how he can get Tommy back without Stu and Dee Dee being none the wiser.
Remember the 30s. If anybody can find Tommy, it's Lou Pickles, Private Eye.
Back at the mansion, the old ladies feed their army of cats on the massive dining room table, which is just a disgusting mess. At the head of the table is Tommy, who's been dressed up in a fancy outfit and is being served cod liver soup straight out of the can.
Has young Bostwick finished his supper?
Bostwick?
Oh, yes. We're naming him after Father.
It's only right.
Of course.
We're going to give Bostwick a bath. Oh, isn't it marvelous?
A bath with mineral spirits, just as Father prescribed. Clarice, you fetch the sulfur cakes. I'll get the scouring pad.
As good as done, sister. As good as done.
As Tommy awaits his fate, we see Grandpa Lou going on a 1930s film noir style investigation, complete with interrogations and everything. He ends up coming upon a woman working in the back of the supermarket who very nervously makes sure he isn't with grocery store security before telling him that the car belongs to a man named Max who dresses fancy and has a bald head. That's right about all she can say though before Grandpa Lou is being forcibly ripped away by the security guards. As that struggle's going down, we cut back to the mansion where Tommy has slipped away from Max and the old ladies and has found himself hiding in a vivarium, which is home to a talking parrot.
You can talk?
You can talk. You can talk.
Yeah, I can talk, but I didn't know birds could talk. Are those ladies keeping you here too?
Crazy ladies. Crazy ladies.
I miss my grandpa. Listen, let's you and me get out of here, all right?
All right. All right.
What's your name? My name's Tommy.
My name's Tommy. My name's Tommy.
You're Tommy too?
Tommy and Tommy escape from the vivarium, and they end up wandering the halls together. Sadly, though, it isn't long before they hear the old ladies approaching and calling for them. They run and hide in a room, seeking refuge underneath the bed. As that happens, back at the grocery store, Grandpa Lou is taken to the back office where a big cigar-smoking man in a suit is warning him about sticking his nose too deep into others' business.
Keep asking questions, and you might start finding the answers not to your liking.
Is that a threat?
A threat? Oh, two gentlemen of the world such as ourselves hardly have need of threats, sir. I'm sure we can come to some sort of mutually beneficial understanding.
The man tries to bribe Lou to stay quiet and stop asking questions with a stack of coupons that could get him free chips and guac for life, but Lou refuses, saying that he's not going to stop until he gets his grandson back. At that, the man has Lou thrown out of the store, and we cut back to Tommy and Tommy, who are under the bed still, hiding. As the old ladies enter the room, they talk about how this room was their father's and it had been untouched since his death, and they begin to call out to Tommy.
Bostwick, are you in here?
You squeal
Bostwick, are you all right? See how he found his way right to the judge's room?
Obviously, he was born to be a pendragon.
Obviously.
The women keep swooning about the future, talking about sending him to military school and Harvard. Meanwhile, Grandpa Lou is approaching his final subject. He walks into a frozen yogurt shop and interrogates the guy behind the counter, who knows Max by name and serves him weekly. After a bit of threatening, he tells Lou that Max lives in a place called Grey Gardens, and even provides him with the exact address. Next thing you know, we see Grandpa Lou at the mansion, walking right up to the door, pretending to be a chimney sweep and pretty much forcing his way into the house. Within seconds, though, he drops the act.
I'm looking for a baby.
A baby? I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about.
Really? Then maybe I better call the police in to interpret.
That won't be necessary. Please walk this way.
Ladies, I'm looking for a baby.
There must be some mistake, Mr. Pickles.
There have been no children at Grey Gardens for over 50 years.
Just then, though, Lou sees the familiar sight of Tommy's rattle on the ground, and he calls their bluff. They try to lie their way out of it, but when Lou says that the baby is his grandson, and that he'll do anything to get him back, they both turn around and whisper to each other, having a quick meeting about how they should proceed.
Do you have any proof of what you claim, Mr. Pickles? That this child is indeed your grandson?
Proof? There is the Pickles family birthmark.
Oh, my. We were thinking more along the lines of a snapshot.
A snapshot? Why, I got 1,000,000 of them.
By the end of it, Lou ends up sitting around the table with Tommy and these women who tried to keep him as their own, as they all talk about how they actually have some mutual acquaintances, playing all buddy-buddy with each other.
Ooh, look at the time.
Goodbye, Louis.
Goodbye, Bostwick.
Bostwick?
Now, this one right here is an episode that I will never forget. It's one that, interestingly enough, as a kid, I always perceived as a light-hearted and silly tale. Like, in comparison to the one where those two criminals blatantly abduct Tommy from his own front yard, this one is portrayed as a fun day at the playground. However, underneath the silly animation and gags with talking parrots is a truly shocking story. Right out the gate, though, I have to tackle something that I can kinda see coming from a mile away. I know good and well there's going to be at least one person in the comments that attempts to point out that Tommy getting abducted in this one was a mistake. And sure, the inciting incident here certainly was a mistake. But even though that mistake led to it happening, the point still stands that when these old women realized that a mistake was made, they didn't even attempt to do the right thing. As a matter of fact, they stopped Max from doing the right thing when he was ready to call the police right from the get-go. Like, let me put it in just a little bit of different terms for a moment. That would be like if you left your cell phone in a shopping cart at the store and someone accidentally picked it up thinking it was theirs because they had the same case and the same exact phone. But when they realized they had someone else's phone, instead of bringing it to Lost and Found at the store, they decide to get out of the store as quickly as possible and hide with your phone pretending that it's theirs. Then, when you use modern technology to track your phone to their house, which Grandpa Lou had to do the old-fashioned way in this episode, they try to lie to your face so that they can keep your phone. Except, well, in this instance, replace the phone with a literal child. Of course, in this episode, the initial accident is understandable on their behalf because it's not like Max put the baby in his car. However, once they knowingly keep the baby that they accidentally stole and try to rename him and hide him from his guardian, that's when we're crossing into abduction and illegal territory. To sit here and act like it's all just a misunderstanding or like this was just a big accident all in all is to completely ignore that this man had to literally threaten to call the cops to get them to hand over his grandson. Them hearing Grandpa Lou plead with them to give Tommy back, then thinking about it for a moment over a little timeout huddle with one another before finally deciding that they're going to do the right thing, doesn't absolve them from all the messed up stuff that we watched them blatantly do in this episode. Now, moving along from there, one thing that's wild for me to realize about this episode is just how much every single subtle undertone, from the smallest inference to the most direct and clear as day representation, plays such a huge role in not only dissecting Tommy's character for the sake of this video, but also it'll change how you look at Tommy as a character throughout the entirety of this series. Specifically, there were a few things that made me realize this. First of all, was how this show repeatedly places Tommy in situations where he's separated from his family. I mean, whether he's being kidnapped, left at the store, or getting lost in a bakery or a post office, Tommy is almost always ending up separated from his family and sometimes forced into some pretty traumatic and messed up situations. These kinds of instances are the kind of thing that this early in life, especially at Tommy's age, could instill in extreme fear of abandonment. By all means, nearly every toddler comes pre-programmed with a minor dose of separation anxiety, it seems, but like being put in situations like this repeatedly and having to handle yourself at such a young age can certainly make your run-of-the-muck separation anxiety and fear of abandonment spiral into something way bigger. And that's something that the further I followed this story, the more that it made sense and the deeper that it got. Not only that, but we've also seen Grandpa Lou put Tommy in danger inadvertently over and over again. Sadly, he's not the only one to do it, too. We've also seen Tommy's own parents and really almost any other parent that ends up being in charge of watching him do it. Of course, I'll always admit that Tommy is rather adventurous, rambunctious, and he has a tendency to wander off and go exploring while people aren't paying attention. However, that right there is the issue. The people who are responsible for his safety not being able to pay attention to him for more than like a few seconds at a time. That's not to say he's neglected by any means, but it's not all too common that you see one of his parents just like sitting down and focusing on him for a while when it isn't meal time or something like that. I mean, even when Grandpa tries to sit down and tell him a story, he doesn't get more than like 2 sentences into it before he falls asleep. Meanwhile, Tommy's parents are far more prone to just leaving him in the playpen, which he can easily escape from, and disappearing for large chunks of time. As a result, even in his own home, he comes close to getting hurt, or he ends up in really awful situations time and time again. Honestly, I imagine this could potentially do a lot of damage to a child's outlook on life. This right here, plain as day, is something that could partially destroy someone's ability to trust those who are supposed to be keeping them safe, and ultimately, it's stuff like this that leads to further trust issues later on in life, even outside of a parental context. Furthermore, this also teaches him a lot about responsibility and, well, how to completely shirk it. Speaking of responsibility, though, Grandpa Lou doesn't even end up coming clean to Tommy's parents about the mistake that he made here. As a matter of fact, he went through extra steps to make sure that they would never find out. That right there is just the biggest show of avoiding any and all responsibility for his actions. He doesn't even own up to what he had done, and that's honestly a bit of a tough one to dissect. It's really hard because no one even knows what Tommy went through in the episode Ruthless Tommy, where he was abducted by criminals. There's a lot to say about that one, but now he's been abducted for a second time, and the only person who knows is Grandpa Lou, who A, refuses to tell Tommy's parents, and B, isn't exactly known for talking about feelings and processing emotions very well. With that in mind, it hits like a ton of bricks to know that Tommy is left to process all of this on his own. It's honestly really sad to say that this is just the first instance too. Throughout the rest of this video, that's going to play a huge role in everything that happens. However, it is yet another one of those things that makes you look back at every single episode of this show, and it's surprising how that's such a common theme across so many of them. Hey friends, really quick, I hope you're having a fantastic day and that you're enjoying this video. I wanted to give y'all a fair warning. I'm recording this during a thunderstorm outside, and I've soundproofed as much as I can, but if you hear a little rain or maybe a little thunder in the background, sorry about that. I'll try my best to cut it out, but just kind of wanted to give you guys a heads up before we keep going. So, both times that Tommy was abducted and in the care of complete and absolute strangers who had no idea how to take care of a baby, he faced some pretty shocking and traumatizing things. In this one specifically, he was forced into this disgusting house, given a new identity and a new look, surrounded by cats, and practically force-fed their canned food. He wandered the halls, and there was dust everywhere, and he even made a comment about how someone must not have cleaned up in here for years. On top of the general nasty house exposure, though, these old ladies were disgustingly excited about giving him a bath with mineral spirits. Granted, it was because that's what their father liked, and they seem to think that this baby is pretty much a reincarnation of their father, but come on. That just sounds miserable, even as an adult. Scouring pads? Sulfur cakes? These old ladies are through the roof excited about practically taking sandpaper and acid to a baby's skin. On that note, with how soft and thin a baby's skin is, that's pretty dangerous, isn't it? You're supposed to use a soft washcloth and sensitive skin soap on a baby, not literal steel wool and a chemical that's known for irritating skin. I mean, they're talking about leaving this baby with open wounds in their disgusting house, which is crawling with a likely illegal number of cats. It's honestly surprising how much danger that Tommy was actually in here, especially considering the fact that these women originally intended on keeping him, and their butler actually complied. At least the criminals from Ruthless Tommy wanted to get money and give Tommy back to his parents. These old ladies, though, they wanted to give him a new identity and just pretend like he's their own. And honestly, given how they wanted to treat him and the lifestyle that they live, it's just chilling to think about how much Tommy's life would have changed if they had their way. Now, going in a bit of a different direction, I can't help but find myself wondering about this grocery store and what kind of scheme that they're involved in. Even the employees who recognize Max and know him are afraid to talk to anyone about him. The security guards seem to take care of anyone who asks about him, and this guy in the suit seems to be willing to keep people quiet if they stop snooping in his business. It's all just really odd. On top of that, earlier in this episode, Max makes a comment about how the old ladies aren't that rich because they haven't been paying him for quite some time now. It all makes for a very peculiar situation, and it has me curious about what kind of illegal activity has been going on here. Maybe it's a money laundering scheme or something along those lines. But given the fact that a child was involved, the implications seem quite a bit more dark and morbid. I will point out, though, that when it came time that Max came home with the baby, he instinctively went to call the authorities. However, it was the old ladies that had stopped him. That fact right there does have me curious if maybe there's something bigger going on here and maybe Max is just some kind of pawn in all of it. With that being said though, the likelihood is very low, given that this is a simple, silly episode of a children's cartoon that, in all reality, is just making references to a few different classic movies from many, many decades ago. On top of all that though, this one would see a very interesting case of what could be compared to mistaken identity to a degree. Like, these people started calling Tommy by a different name and dressing him up as someone that he wasn't. Meanwhile, the episode Ruthless Tommy saw him being abducted because his identity was mistaken for that of a millionaire's son. It's interesting to connect the dots and realize that mistaken identity has been a pretty common theme in Tommy's life. However, just how deep that these experiences would affect him and the correlation between mistaken identity and many other dark themes in his life would be the most shocking of all. In my opinion, one of the most compelling episodes that starts to show this pattern plain as day would be none other than the Season 5 episode, Fugitive Tommy. As this episode begins, we see the McNulty boys at the park where Timmy, the oldest of the brothers, is ceremoniously handing down the family ball to his little brother Teddy for his first birthday.
Yours to throw and catch and roll until another McNulty is born. Do you accept this responsibility?
Teddy accepts the responsibility, and as Timmy throws him the ball, it bounces off of his head and over towards the bushes, where that kid with the animal crackers is ominously hiding and watching them. Teddy runs up and grabs it, but the kid rips the ball out of his hands and knocks him down in the process, walking away with Teddy's ball.
Hey, what's that? He took the ball and he knocked me down.
Just like that, we cut on over to a different part of the park where Grandpa Lou is yet again responsible for watching Tommy as they're just now arriving. Turns out it's Grandpa Day at the park as he walks up to the McNulty boys' grandpa and his old friend Mr. Lasky, who also brought his grandson to the park.
He's right over there with the other kids. Now come on, let's play already.
Hold your horses. I've got to get mine settled. What's with your queen there?
It's that grandson of mine. An angel, that Gabriel. Except he's teething right now. Just wants to chew on everything.
Lou passes Tommy his bottle and the two grandpas begin their game of chess, even though Mr. McNulty literally just warned Lou that Mr. Lasky is a blatant cheater. Along the way though, Tommy ends up dropping his bottle and it goes rolling towards some nearby bushes. He picks it up and the same kid from earlier walks up, biting the McNulty boys' ball and popping it before going right up to Tommy and yanking the bottle out of his hands, biting the nipple off and drinking Tommy's milk. He then pulls out his animal crackers and keeps eating them, walking off like nothing even happened. Tommy just kinda stands there confused as he picks up the flat ball that kid left behind.
That's him! He pushed me down and break the McNulty ball! But I didn't do nothing. Hey, wait a minute. Aren't you the Pickles kid? I would have expected better from you.
Tommy stands up for himself, saying that it was a kid with one tooth who also bit the top off of his bottle. But when Timmy points out that there's no other kids around, everyone immediately blames Tommy, assuming that he did it. They end up taking him as their prisoner, using a finger trap as makeshift handcuffs, and wheeling him around in a wagon. Tommy begs and pleads with them, saying he didn't do it. However, they don't care. Timmy says that he's staying right there until he apologizes for what he did.
I'm not staying sorry for something I didn't do. And while I'm here, there's a kid out there who's gonna pop the other kid's balls. Yeah, right. Come on, guys. Let's go play. He's not going anywhere.
While the McNultys go off and play, Tommy sits stuck in the wagon trying to get free. But all of a sudden, it starts flying down the hill that they left him on top of, leaving Tommy unable to hold himself steady while he goes rolling away uncontrollably. The McNulty boys give chase. Meanwhile, across the park, Grandpa Lou is none the wiser of what's happening to his grandson as he mindlessly plays chess with Mr. Lasky, who is cheating right under Lou's nose, crystal clear. Back in Tommy's world, though, the wagon goes crashing into a sandbox, sending him flying and almost landing on his head. He quickly gets up and runs away before the McNultys can catch up, and as he hides in the bushes, he finds a trail of animal crackers all over the ground.
That one-toothed kid was here, and he got that way. I just need something to poke in here so I can pull him off. I got it! I found something!
Timmy sees the screwdriver and he assumes that's what Tommy had to have used to pop their ball, and he begins to direct the search for Tommy. Timmy draws a diagram of the park in the sand and positions his brothers at spots where Tommy wouldn't be able to escape, and as that's happening, Tommy's following the trail of animal crackers. He doesn't find the kid that he's looking for, but he does find a dog who's able to chew on the finger trap and help Tommy get it off. We quickly learn, though, that this is actually the McNulty's dog, and he brings the finger trap to one of them, causing their search to continue in that direction. They end up spying Tommy running, and as the McNulty boys chase him right past his own grandpa, who's still just completely oblivious, Tommy ends up climbing up the play structure and taking refuge inside. He sprints for his life as the McNulty boys chase him until eventually he comes to a dead end.
Enough with your lying, Pickles. You're coming with me, and we're gonna tell everybody you're a dirty ball popper.
No matter how much Tommy pleads, the McNultys won't believe him, so he has no choice but to jump. He goes down the slide and runs as fast as he can until he ends up coming upon the kid who's biting everyone's stuff. Tommy finds him just obliterating a tetherball with his one and only tooth. He confronts the boy, saying that he's gotten him in a ton of trouble and that he needs to stop biting everybody's stuff.
You don't know what you're talking about. This tooth hurts worse than diaper rash. It's driving me crazy.
Well, that don't mean that you can go around hurting other babies.
But I didn't hurt that kid with the ball. He fell over. Yeah, I just wanted his ball because this tooth, it hurts so bad. I had to bite something.
The McNultys realize that they actually did frame the wrong kid, as one of them realizes that they've stumbled upon the real culprit. Timmy immediately goes to attack the kid, and Tommy tries to stop him, but it's completely useless. The only one that is able to stop his brother is Teddy, who comes to the defense of this teething toddler.
We can't be too mad at him, cause I got a tooth coming in too, and it does hurt really bad.
As the episode comes to an end, we see the two teething kids chewing on the McNulty ball together while Tommy plays with the older boys. Meanwhile, Grandpa Lou finally gets fed up with the teething boy's grandfather and his continuous cheating, calling the game to an early end. Now, this episode is one that really lands differently. However, it certainly falls exactly in line with the events of both episodes where we've seen Tommy getting abducted, in the sense that Tommy's identity was yet again in question here. There's a lot to unpack as far as that's concerned. But before I get to that, there's something that's really important to be said about this one, and it's a bit far removed from the picture that we're painting of Tommy. Even with that being said though, we need to acknowledge that this kid's tooth hurts, and that's why he's being such a massive jerk to everyone. I have to condense things for fair use, but when you watch this full episode on your own, you really see just how rude this kid ends up being. Now, I'm glad that the babies could have some empathy because they could recognize just how much teething hurts. But also, you gotta admit, on an audience taking in the moral of the story level, this sends a really mixed message. Brazenly boiling it down to its simplest form, this episode kind of teaches kids that if someone does you wrong intentionally, as long as they're in pain, it's excusable. If I'm truly being honest, that's not really a moral that I agree with. That's how some people end up in dangerous relationships, thinking that they should put up with crappy behavior just because the person it's coming from is having a hard time in life. Of course, I'll fully admit that it's one thing to have a one-time outburst due to a frustrating injury that you're recovering from, or some other outside factor that's completely removed from the realm of daily life. However, if it's a recurring pattern of someone hurting other people because they themselves are hurt, that's a totally different story. In real life, there's a tough line to be walked where tolerance is something that's extremely important. Giving someone slack when they've been through some really hard stuff is important. However, that shouldn't really absolve them of any responsibility for damages done while they were going through that hard time. That's not to say that this kid who was teething is like this every day, even outside of teething, but that's to say that the moral of the story is one to kind of take with a bit of an asterisk. Because in real life, this kind of forgiveness is one that should be handed out on a basis that acknowledges the frequency of how often the aggressive behavior is occurring. But circling back to Tommy though, in this episode we saw him put in danger multiple times yet again. First of all, Grandpa Lou shows up with him and just tells him to go play while he focuses on something completely trivial, paying absolutely no mind to his grandson, who, might I add, at one point attempted to walk up to the gate to leave. Lou is lucky that Tommy didn't have his screwdriver at this moment, because he straight up would have just left the park and gone wandering down the road. Yet again, here we are with his grandpa inadvertently putting him in danger and just being blatantly oblivious. On top of that though, we also see Tommy come really close to danger at that moment where he ends up careening down the hill in a wagon and crashing into the sandbox thanks to the McNulty boys. He didn't even have use of his hands at this moment to catch himself or break his fall. He's so lucky that he didn't get hurt here, and let's just be honest, even if he did, there's a solid chance that the McNulty boys would have just ran away and pretended that they had no idea what was going on. And furthermore, Grandpa Lou would have been none the wiser because he's too busy, yet again, putting Tommy in danger. It hits like a ton of bricks to realize that this literal baby was straight up taken prisoner by a bunch of kids who are older than him, forcibly separated from his grandpa, and into a position where he had no choice but to deal with and handle all of this on his own without help from anyone. I mean, at one point, he even blatantly runs right past his grandpa in fear, with the McNulty boys angrily chasing him while shouting, and his grandpa doesn't even realize what's going on. There's just so much wrong here, and essentially it boils down to even more reasons why Tommy's likely developing an ingrained fear of abandonment and possibly furthering the lack of trust for those who are responsible for looking out for him. More than anything, it's painting a picture that shows blatant recurring themes of traumatic events for Tommy. We gotta keep in mind, this episode is clear all the way in Season 5, whereas the last episode was back in Season 2. All across this time, Tommy has been put in danger time and time again. One massive thing that really drives me nuts, though, is that throughout all of the bad things that happen to Tommy, most of which aren't his fault, there's never any accountability. We touched on how that played a role in the last episode we checked out, but as it pertains to this one, we would see Timmy and the rest of the McNulty boys come to the realization that they had targeted the wrong baby this entire time. They straight up ruined Tommy's time at the park, framed him for something he didn't do, and even punished him. They dished out justice for a crime that Tommy did not commit. Eventually, though, when the realization struck that Tommy didn't do it, there was no apology. There was no acknowledgement that Tommy told the truth. They just changed their target and simply started going after a completely different kid. By all means, I am glad Tommy didn't have to take the fall for this kid's actions, of course, but more than that, I'm frustrated that there's no point where Tommy gets any recognition for anything bad that happens to him ever. Specifically, the many things that are out of his control. Tommy puts up with being kidnapped not once, but twice, and put through awful, disgusting living conditions. He gets framed and punished for something he didn't do, and at the end of it all, everyone just continues like normal, pretending that nothing happened and that Tommy's just gonna get past all of this hardship he's been forced to endure. Possibly the saddest part of all, though, would be the fact that when all of this awful stuff is happening to Tommy, nobody notices. Grandpa Lou didn't take notice to Tommy being held captive in this episode. He didn't notice him running for his life from the angry mob of McNultys. He didn't notice that he didn't have his bottle anymore and that it was just gone. In the last episode, he didn't notice Tommy being driven away in another person's car. Before that, nobody in the family noticed Tommy being abducted from his own front yard. And when they brought him back, no one even realized that Tommy was even missing for hours on end. Absolutely no one around Tommy notices a single thing. And you might think that it's unimaginable that Tommy isn't picking up on it at this point. It almost seems like he's just expected to endure all of the worst parts of his life, and nobody really acknowledges the bad things that happen to him. The shocking truth, however, is that Tommy actually started picking up on this long ago, and there's actually evidence to support that. Not only that, but also evidence to support that he had already been affected by all of this long before the McNultys had mistaken his identity. This evidence would come in the form of a classic episode that at face value you likely didn't really think much about. In hindsight, especially under the lens that we're checking it out now though, it comes with a pretty big realization that hits like a ton of bricks. Next up, we're diving into none other than the Season 2 episode, Visitors from Outer Space. As this episode starts out, we see Tommy and his dad playing together late at night with a toy fish. All of a sudden, though, Grandpa Lou walks into the living room with a tabloid paper showing an article about a family who was abducted by aliens and enslaved for 15 million years, which is equivalent to about 12 seconds in Earth time.
I didn't believe it at first either, but these are eyewitness reports. Those aliens got weapons that can blow up a planet with a push of a button.
Well, while you two debate this, I'm gonna put this little guy to bed.
Stu tucks Tommy into bed and he falls fast asleep. Hours pass and next thing you know, he wakes up in the middle of the night to the window open and his curtains blowing in the wind. All of a sudden, the house across the fence turns into a spaceship and Tommy is plucked right out of his bed and, yet again, abducted from his family. The ship flies off into space as Tommy meets the aliens inside.
Greetings, Earthling.
Oh, Stuvon, you know these humans can't talk. They're inferior beings.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
That's the trouble with you aliens, you're always forgetting.
Not the robot again.
And don't be so sure them Earthlings are dumb as you think. One of these days they might just haul off and surprise you.
Stu, Vaughn, and Dee-Dor, the alien equivalents of Stu and Dee-Dee, tell Robot Grandpa Lou to take Tommy to the holding cell with the rest of the humans. He heads there, running into Alien Spike along the way, and eventually he comes upon a room with a playpen that has a dome over it, which has all of Tommy's friends and his cousin Angelica inside.
Who are those funny-looking grown-ups? You guys, I think they're aliens. Aliens? My grandpa says they're gonna take over our blanket. No, anything but that.
Ah, quit your belly aching. We gotta escape.
Ah, here it is, Dee-Dor, my latest invention.
Stu Vaughn excitedly gives a demonstration of the Stu Vaughn 5000, the latest breakthrough in blowing up troublesome planets. With nothing but a point and the click of a button, they can disintegrate any planet that they deem expendable. After the demonstration, Angelica pipes up and talks to them, catching all of the aliens off guard as they were sure that Earthlings couldn't communicate.
I'll try to establish communication. Hello, little Earthling. What's your name?
My name's Angelica. May I play with your TV changer?
Huh?
I think the Earthling means your planet atomizer, Stuvan.
Oh. I'm sorry, little Earthling, but the Stuvan 5000 is far too dangerous for a being of inferior intelligence.
I said get it!
Angelica takes the Stu Vaughn 5000 and uses it to blow a hole in the wall of their cell, breaking free. She runs off as the rest of the aliens pursue her, leaving the babies free to escape on their own. Meanwhile, we see Angelica enter this room full of jarred heads and cells full of different aliens from other planets. One of them, a large talking fish, gets her attention and introduces himself as George, begging for her help getting free, saying that he's on the menu for tomorrow night's dinner.
What's in it for me?
You ever been queen of your own planet?
Do I get a crown?
Hey, there she is!
Stand back!
With the gravity turned off, George and Angelica are able to escape from the aliens. However, shortly after, Robot Grandpa ends up turning the gravity back on. With their head start though, Angelica and George are able to make their way to a garage where they hop into a space shuttle and take off in a ship headed out into the vast darkness. A little while later, we see them slowly floating through space as Angelica disintegrates planets willy-nilly using the Stu Vaughn 5000. At one point though, saying that he wants to remember this forever, George asks if he can get a picture of Angelica for a souvenir.
Why don't you put on these? After all, you're gonna be a queen. Could you back up just a little bit now? A little more. Yeah, just a little over to the left, okay? Hey! So long, sucker!
Back on the ship, we see the babies playing with all sorts of odd devices in the cockpit. They cause the ship to go crazy and start uncontrollably flying all over the place. It ends up hurtling toward the sun, and at the exact second that it enters its burning hot atmosphere, Tommy shoots awake, realizing that all of this was just a dream. He then looks to the night sky, seeing the stars shining down from above.
I'm the queen, Cynthia, and I said dig for food. Now dig!
So, first of all, this is a fantastic episode. This one has so much character, mystery, replay value, and just such a flawless design all in all. It captures that early Rugrats charm in such a truly remarkable way. However, as amazing as this episode is, it certainly comes along with some dark implications. Again, at face value, This one is just a simple, silly story centered around a wild dream. But in the grand scheme of things, it's so much more than that. This episode is the official point where things are boiling over to where Tommy can't control it, and now he's having abduction-themed nightmares. Sure, it may have originally came from hearing his grandpa talking about a story in a tabloid, but even then, the fact that Tommy was able to paint such a vivid mental picture in his dreams at such a young age is truly concerning. This literal baby has certainly never seen an alien abduction movie or experienced anything like that in real life. The dream that he cooked up in his mind was an original creation based solely off of his grandpa saying one thing. However, though he may not have seen any alien movies, he has experienced being abducted by strangers and taken into their homes on multiple occasions by this episode. With that in our minds, it's worth noting that as a baby, he isn't able to verbalize any trauma that he may be holding on to from those experiences. But this right here is our proof that it undeniably exists and is manifesting subconsciously. Just let that sink in. This baby has been abducted and taken from his family twice by this point. And now he's having extremely vivid nightmares of being taken away from his family in the middle of the night. Yet again, this ties right into the formation of that severe fear of abandonment that I brought up earlier. However, another really interesting thing is that it also ties into his trust for his family. It's pretty wild to take into consideration that he wasn't getting abducted by strangers or like scary, freaky monster aliens. He was being abducted by aliens that all very closely resembled his family. They all looked like the people that he was supposed to trust most in this world. And they were the ones taking him. Now, I will be honest with you guys and say I'm a little mixed on this point, because on one hand, that could certainly lean into the fact that, again, he hasn't seen any alien movies or anything like that before, so it could be his brain filling in the gaps with things that he does know, but on a deeper level, this could also be telling of the trust that he has for his parents and grandpa being completely abolished. He trusts them to keep him safe so little that at this point, they're the ones that are taking him in his nightmares. I mean, I feel like it's pretty telling that in this alien ship, there were no alien versions of the babies. It was only alien versions of the adults and robot grandpa. In this dream that Tommy constructed subconsciously, all of his friends, even Angelica, are completely normal. Personally, I feel like this could be a reflection of how his perceptions of his friends are grounded in expectations that are rooted in reality. He knows how they are. He knows what to expect from them and their typical reactions. His parents and Grandpa Lou, though, they're kind of wild cards in that regard. He can't bank on whether or not they're actually watching him closely or how much attention they're paying to the trouble that he's getting into, because they're completely inconsistent about it. Tommy knows inside that he can't just always bank on them being there to save him, because the truth is, a lot of times they aren't. They've sat idly by, completely oblivious on multiple occasions while they let Tommy get into trouble. They've let him not only get abducted, but also straight up not paid attention to the level that he's ended up wandering the streets on a few different occasions. They've been oblivious to him getting harassed by not only other kids, but also his own cousin. Honestly, as morbid as it sounds, it makes sense that in his nightmare where he's yet again being abducted, it's his own family that's doing it. Because, in all reality, his distrust for them is likely growing deeper and deeper on a subconscious level. With every single passing instance that he has to fend for himself while he's in danger, Meanwhile, they're just nearby sitting and doing nothing. In the back of his mind, the distrust grows more and more. And sure, having to fend for himself and handle his own from a young age definitely builds a thick, resilient skin, and it results in Tommy being a strong leader. But it's no secret that it's pretty sad to see that it's been unfolding in front of us this entire time, and it was so easy to miss all along. Now, continuing a bit more on his family though, it's really interesting to take in Tommy's mental representations of his family, given that they're all based on his own perceptions of them. In this nightmare, Stu Vaughn, Dee-Dor, and Robot Grandpa were all seemingly very hyperbolized caricatures of how they are in real life. Specifically, the way that Tommy sees them. Stu Vaughn is a destructive inventor, seeing entire planets as expendable and being completely unaware of the serious danger that comes with wielding such power. Dee-Dor came across as kind of a know-it-all, claiming that all humans are inferior and that they can't even communicate because they're all so much less intelligent. Meanwhile, pointing out every single flaw in Stu Vaughn's plans. Then, of course, we have Robot Grandpa, who in Tommy's dream is even more of a know-it-all than Dee-Dor, thinking that the aliens and humans are both just as dumb and that no living being could compare to his superior computer intellect. Everything from how these characters look down to how they act is completely built from Tommy's brain, given that this is his dream. These are the versions of his family as he sees them, and that right there really says a lot about how he perceives his family and specifically the ways that they interact with one another. The thing about this episode, though, is that there is one massive difference between this one and the last few that we've checked out. One gigantic missing element, which, when you realize it isn't there, makes things so much darker. And that missing thing would be the aspect of mistaken identity. Previously, the episodes we checked out all showed trauma going hand in hand, commonly with Tommy's identity. This one, though, didn't have anything to do with that. This one was the trauma of abduction rearing its ugly head, seemingly unprovoked. That right there would show us that Tommy's experiences are having a deeper effect on him to the point where those fears are manifesting in normal, everyday situations. Like when he's simply just trying to sleep. He's not in a situation where he's being approached by a stranger. He's not in a situation where his unperceptive guardians are neglecting watching over him out in a public place. He's simply at home, laying in bed. But still, the fear of being abducted is manifesting itself through his dreams. What's even more crazy, though, is realizing that this isn't the first time that this fear has shown itself outside of an actual mistaken identity or actual abduction scenario. There's an episode that actually came before this one that would show us even deeper and on an even more low-key level that Tommy truly is struggling with the fear of being taken, and that it goes much deeper than anyone could expect. We're talking about none other than the Season 2 episode, Family Reunion. In the beginning of this episode, we see Tommy on a train with Dee Dee, Stu, Angelica, and Drew as they head to their family reunion. As their stop approaches, they start to grab their luggage and prepare to unboard. However, when it comes time to get off, they realize that Grandpa Lou is nowhere to be found. Stu and Drew end up finding him in the smoking section, telling a story to some of the other guys, and they try to drag him away, saying that the train is about to leave the station any second now. As the train starts to pull away from the station, Stu and Drew both have to jump off at the last second.
You first.
Guess I'm going to Chicago, kids. Have fun at the reunion.
Oh,
here.
You know, I bet he had that planned the whole time.
At that moment, Stu and Drew's cousin Hugh and his wife Dottie come greet them with a smile, happy to see how good the family's doing. They all load into Hugh's truck, and on the way to their farm, Tommy asks Angelica what a family reunion is.
It's when you go to this place and there's lots of other people and all the old ones keep picking you up and kissing you and telling you how big you are and saying they want to take you home with them.
You mean they want to take me away from my mom and dad forever?
Yeah, and maybe even longer than that. They'll take you home and keep you, and you'll never see your mama, your dad, or your dumb old dog ever again.
Finally, they arrive at the farm, and Dee Dee drops Angelica and Tommy off at the playpen with their cousins to meet them. He ends up dumbfounded by how all of these kids look just like him and seem to have an oddly familiar, positive demeanor that loosely mirrors his own.
This is Angelica.
That's right, Angelica Pickles. From now on, I'm in charge.
Say, Angelica, have you met Emmett?
Who's Emmett?
I'm Emmett. Say, you wouldn't be trying to hurt my cousins, would ya?
Oh, no, I'm your cousin, too.
Oh, good. Want to wrestle?
Angelica cries and screams for her dad's help, claiming that the other kids were mean to her, so he takes her off to be with the adults as she teases them on the way out. When she's gone, the other kids remark on how mean she is, but Tommy warns them, saying that she says this family reunion thing is all a big setup for their parents to trade kids with one another. His cousins doubt the warning, saying that their parents would never let that happen, but just then the playpen is flooded with adults swooning all over the babies.
Oh, Mackie, look, that must be little Tommy. He isn't just a spitting image of Stu.
Oh, they're Pickles, all right, Edie.
Y'all want to come live with me, little fella?
And you'll never see your mom or your dad or your dumb old dog ever again.
As all of the adults leave, the babies start contemplating what they're gonna do to get back to their parents. Thankfully, Emmett is able to easily open the door and let the group out, and just like that, they go out wandering for their families. Eventually, they come upon the picnic tables where the gathering is supposed to be taking place, but they're terrified when they find that no one's there. Across the farm, though, we learn that the group is getting a tour from Stu and Drew's cousin Hugh.
Daddy, a doggy.
Ow! My clothes!
Gee, you, Drew, you're a mess. You better go back to the house and change.
Don't worry about sweet little Angelica. We'll look after her, won't we, darling?
Great, thanks.
But Daddy!
With her dad gone, Angelica is left to live in fear of the threat that she made towards Tommy earlier, as her aunt talks about how she's gonna take her home, change her hairstyle, and start having her wake up at the crack of dawn to do chores. Feeling petrified of being forced into that lifestyle, Angelica decides to plot her escape with Cynthia, and not long after that, we see her walking down the path all by herself, away from the barn and the adults.
We're all alone now, Cynthia. It's just you and me against the world. You know something, Cynthia? I don't care. We don't need anybody anyway. Help! Help! Somebody!
While Angelica is dealing with her new goat enemy, the babies are still wandering the property on their own. After making their way through the cornfield, they go through the barn, still following the sunflower seeds and having just barely missed the adults. As they exit the barn, they hear Angelica screaming for help though, and Tommy says that they have to find her and help her.
She was awfully mean. I don't think we should help her, Tommy. No, we gotta help her. She's a Pickles too.
Pickles? I'm hungry.
As the goat prepares to ram Angelica, the babies come up from behind, screaming and scaring the goat away. It jumps over Angelica and runs off, breaking down some fencing and causing a mini stampede of livestock. Tommy approaches Angelica, who cries to him about how her dad left her with these terrible people who wanted to take her and make her do chores.
I guess you were right about family reunions. I thought I was just making it up. Making it up?
Just then, the adults arrive, having finished their tour, and they begin to panic as they see that all of the animals and the children have escaped. Thankfully, though, right at the same time, the babies wander up, not having been too far off at this point. All of the babies are reunited with their parents, and they all share a big, thankful hug. That is, except for Angelica, whose dad is still nowhere to be found.
Talking! Emmett, are you all right, honey?
I'm hungry.
After a moment, though, Drew comes up donning a pair of overalls, and Angelica is thankful to realize that her made-up lie wasn't really the truth after all. As the episode comes to an end, we see a cab pulling up as Grandpa Lou steps out, not all too surprised to see the massive mess that the reunion has already turned out to be. Now, this one right here, more than anything, is the perfect episode to end things on. This episode is the culmination of Tommy's fears boiling over. The fears that are hiding deep inside of him as a result of experiences that left him with really deep-rooted fears of abandonment and potential trust issues. While of course I will acknowledge that the initial fear stemmed from Angelica telling him what the family reunion was, one huge key thing to keep in mind is that Angelica didn't say that they were gonna take kids from their parents. Tommy did. She told him that the old people say that they want to take you home with them, but it was Tommy who responded to that with actual fears that strangers are really going to take him from his parents. This immediate snap reaction on Tommy's part shows that his fear of being abducted at this point isn't your normal innate fear that every young child develops. This completely affirms for us that at this point it isn't your regular everyday separation anxiety. Actual situations of him being forcefully separated from his family have deeply traumatized him. There have been so many times that he's been taken and they didn't even realize it that now it's almost like he's learning instinctively to not trust the entire world around him, even his own family, direct and extended. For Tommy, even just the implication that someone wants to take him home has his guard immediately up because he's been there before, more than once. Anyone being able to say that, regardless of age, is honestly really shocking. However, considering that Tommy's only a baby and he's been through this kind of stuff, it makes this even more concerning. Even deeper than that, though, is when we consider that when Tommy has been through these situations before, he didn't have his parents there with him. One time, he was outside alone, and the other, he was out on an adventure with Grandpa Lou. This time, he's fearing an abduction occurring not only while his parents are there, but like he's worried about them consenting to it and even participating in a child swap. Like, that might just be the darkest part of this whole video. The fact that Tommy is carrying so much emotional baggage that at this point, he's worried that his parents care about him so little that they would just trade him away for another kid. He's experienced them halfway paying attention to him. He's experienced them losing track of him on multiple occasions. He's gotten himself into danger while they're preoccupied with usually frivolous things. And again, they don't even notice. They never notice. As a result, Tommy ends up just left to process everything on his own. His young, still developing brain is left to attempt to process everything that he's gone through, and they're just completely oblivious to all of it. It's remarkably ironic, however, when we keep in mind what kind of mother that Dee Dee is, though. For Stu, I've said this before, he's a set it and forget it kind of dad who can't even remember where he left his car keys, let alone his son. Dee Dee, though, she's the kind of mother who takes her son's mental health incredibly seriously. Just kind of in the wrong ways. Like, we've seen her taking Tommy to therapy pretty early on in the series in an episode that I covered in a different video previously. Something that Stu was incredibly opposed to. But why, may you ask? Not because two strange men showed up having been in possession of him for who knows how long, but because Tommy simply drew on the walls with crayons. Something that nearly every kid does at one point in their life, not aware that the wall isn't just a huge piece of paper waiting to be transformed like a massive canvas. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that when Tommy was abducted, Dee Dee wasn't even home. Or at least when he was returned, he was brought back to Stu and Grandpa, who certainly didn't say anything to her. She likely didn't even have a clue that he had been taken by those guys and exposed to their nasty apartment and their creepy mannerisms, just like how neither her nor Stu had any idea that Tommy was abducted by those old ladies and left wandering their disgusting house because Grandpa Lou didn't tell anyone. When you look at it that way, it's, again, such a tough one to dissect, because the blame goes in just so many different directions. In a sense, Dee Dee was ultimately robbed of the ability to help her son because she's unaware of what he's been through. All in all, this leaves Tommy in the position where he's left processing all of this trauma alone. As a result, he lives in a state of subconscious fear that has its biggest tendency to rear its head when he's facing these kind of situations without his friends, who tend to give him courage and something to stand up for. Like when he was abducted by aliens in his dream, he wasn't really scared, especially when he was with his friends in the playpen. However, when he was first abducted in Ruthless Tommy, he screamed and cried the entire episode. When the old ladies abducted him, he was clearly uncomfortable and trying to escape. When he was afraid of being abducted at the family reunion, you could see it on his face and, well, he was quick to share those feelings with the rest of the babies. When he was the McNulty boys' prisoner, he ran in fear, terrified of what they would do to him and feeling helpless as his grandpa did nothing to stand up for him. This is definitely an aspect that is interesting to consider as far as his character goes, especially applying it to everything that we've learned here. Tommy is his most scared and vulnerable when he's alone. That right there, without a doubt, ties into that fear of abandonment being developed early on. He's extra brave when he's in the company of his friends because he knows that he's not facing anything alone. However, on the other side of that coin, he also knows that he's faced some of the most terrifying things that a person can face on his own without anyone who cares about him there to help. False accusations and justice for crimes not committed, full-blown abductions where they try to change who he is as a person, even him fearing being traded away by his parents like some kind of commodity. All of these things make the everyday struggles that he faces with his friends seem like a walk in the park in comparison. As the pieces fall together and the puzzle paints a visual picture for us, it's truly remarkable just how inspiring of a character that Tommy Pickles really is. He's an inspiration for those in the world who don't live in fear of the unknown, but instead fear what they've faced head on and survived. He's a symbol of strength for those who protect others. His best friend Chucky is in a position where he's able to live with simple fears, such as the bathtub drain or the guy on the cereal box, because Tommy's able to protect him and calm him as the one who's actually been through serious situations and has fears that are only rooted in real-life scenarios that he's faced, which would bring even a fully grown adult to a breaking point. In all reality, This is such a double-edged sword. Tommy is such a strong and resilient kid. He's inspiring. However, the reason behind that strength and resiliency is rooted in having conquered some really hard to overcome challenges ever since the day he was born prematurely. Sure, he may be a strong kid, an excellent leader, and a great friend. However, it's undeniable that in a sense, he's been failed by a lot of the adults around him. He's had to teach himself how to keep himself and others safe because he learned from a young age that no one else is going to do it for him. And that right there, that might just be the most morbid aspect of Tommy Pickles as a character. But, my friends, I have to ask, what do you guys think? Are you mind blown by these realizations? Did you connect the dots on these themes of mistaken identity and trauma long ago? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. Of course, you already know I have to give a massive shout out to my friends in the True 90s Kids tier across Patreon and of course YouTube memberships. These are the folks that help me keep the lights on, they help me save up for a new camera for some stuff I'm working on, they help keep me going, and I really appreciate their support. You guys absolutely rock, and I appreciate every single one of my patrons and YouTube members. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and consider sticking around for another nostalgic walk down memory lane. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Peace.